Hello, so question and answer session number 3. We're moving on to Amy's questions, which were very well thought out. So her first question was, I wasn't completely clear on recruiting officer, why they did this, and why did Wharton Baker choose this particular play? Did it develop other themes? Well, the answer to why this play is, as I said in question and answer session number 1, yes, they did stage this play. So it's based on what play they did stage. But the one thing I must really highlight is the way the playwright use the lines of the actual play to show the themes in Our Country's Good. So if you want to have a look very quickly, if you've got your play handy, Act 2, Scene 10, that is the scene, the love scene between Mary and Ralph. And they use the play all the way through to help communication develop. And Mary is actually practicing her lines, and Ralph sees her and starts actually performing with her. Ralph had argued with Wisehammer because Wisehammer really likes Mary too and sees himself as much better candidate because he's of similar status rather than of being the whore as such of Ralph. And we see him talk about that earlier in the play and try to woo Mary over. And Ralph very quickly says, no, I want to be the male role performing with Mary, because he wants to have that time with her to communicate. She's shy and he wants to act with her to connect. And what you see is this parallel of a love story develop from the recruiting officer into Our Country's Good. And in Act 2, Scene 10, Mary's reciting her line, and then Ralph says, what do you please as to that? Will you lodge at my quarters in the meantime? You shall have part of my bed, Sylvia, Mary. So basically, he is saying Sylvia, because that is the character that Mary is playing. He's saying the line from the play, but he's actually saying her name as an actor as well, the convict Mary, because it overlaps and he wants her to share part of his bed with him too. So it's lovely the way it's constructed, that there's this love scene coming through where it's a mixture between Ralph and Mary and Sylvia and the other characters that are playing in the recruiting officer. So it's used very skillfully to show their love, and that is the scene which they kiss in at the end. So it's very nicely constructed. So then another question Amy said was, I was really intrigued by the Aborigine character and would like to know more about the dream, the ancestors that he mentions. I understand this is an objective comment of the new society as well as comment on colonialism, especially when he captures smallpox. But I think I could develop my understanding. I also link this character to Caesar. I don't really know why he's got there from Madagascar to a convict ship. Well, to answer those questions, the Aborigines had a sense of musicality with the land, and they used to call it the dream. They believed in the harmony of the land. And you're right in that he was creating an observational comment about the new society, and he captures smallpox. So basically, again, going back to the original source, that all sorts of things were brought in the First Fleet and all the following fleets to come to the colony. There were many ships that ended up coming after the First Fleet, and they brought European diseases. And you see the Aborigine has got smallpox because not only have they inflicted their society on the Aborigines' way of life, but they have also inflicted disease, and that is based on fact. And the actual quantity, I have read it, but I can't recall it off the top of my head, the quantity of Aborigines that were killed and because of the colonies arriving was vast. There were a lot of them, and that was through disease. It was also through aggression. The convicts hated the Aborigine because Philip actually tried to create a sense of respect to these people and treat them nicely, but they all saw them as savages, and so a lot were murdered. So that covers that question. But talking about Caesar, it's really interesting because in Georgian society, and it's been very much in the media at the moment, in Georgian society, in the beginning of the 1700s, the British and Americans did capture slaves from various parts of the world, and the slave trade began. It has become very fashionable in British wealthy society that in wealthy homes they had black servants. And I suspect, although there is nothing in the literature to tell me that for a fact, but I suspect that he was an actual sort of almost fashion item in a home in the UK, and had been captured as a slave and became a servant in a house. They would do errands, they would do tasks, and they would just not be paid, but I suppose they would have somewhere to live. But obviously slaves did attempt to run away. It's quite possible he ran away, and sometimes when these people ran away they would take an item that maybe they could sell, and he could have been caught, which is why he's on the convict ships. And there is evidence of that sort of things happening to black slaves of the period, which is, like I said, been very much in the media at present. So I suspect that's why he is in there, because he represents Georgian society at the time as well. She also says, I'd like to develop my understanding of Liv Morden. I think her role is to show how people who became criminals were often treated badly as children and had no choice but to choose the life of poverty. Her acceptance of a crime. Sorry, that's the dog. I'm just going to pause one moment.